Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
It is the post-G-Day show, the Sunday after G-Day, and we're going to treat this kind of like we do on a normal Georgia football game week. I'm Wes Blankenship, Palmer Toms, Jake Rowe in the chat this evening. Guys, I want to start off. We've had 24 hours now to think about this game and the scrimmage, and I'm wondering, I know that you guys are on the ball and nothing gets past you in the way of Georgia football news and prognostication. But when you look back on this game, let's just look at some things to start off that surprised us and talk about what we did learn from the Dogs on this G-Day. I'll start while you guys collect your thoughts. The thing that surprised me, and maybe this was brewing for a little bit, and it's not necessarily the news of Bear Alexander's transfer itself, the fact that it happens on G-Day, and I talked about this in my immediate reaction yesterday at Sanford Stadium right after the game ended, the timing surprised me. And I guess nothing should surprise me anymore with the transfer portal because it is just such a part of the game these days. But I asked Brock Bowers about it. I asked Arian Smith about it. And I said, look, guys, I'm not asking you to comment on your transferred teammate specifically. He's gone. Bygones are bygones, and honestly, it seemed like there was no love lost between the Dogs and Bear Alexander. But when I asked them how surprised they were that a teammate just straight up transferred after going through an entire spring session, all of Georgia spring practices, they weren't fazed by it, but I was. And I guess this is just the name of the game in college football right now. There's no date that is sacred, not even G-Day, for a transfer into the portal.
Little unspoken commentary, I think, on just the situation in general. I'm not one to cast aspersions on a kid or anything like that, but it just wasn't going to work out. I will say this. Paperwork was in for him to be in the portal in January, and he didn't ultimately end up in there, or he wasn't in there for long enough for anybody to notice it. I think he's going to end up at USC. I think they just wasn't going to work out for him at Georgia. And there was some talk of friction. And I want folks to understand this because we had this conversation on our board. I wish I had a number for you, but I would say probably a half dozen kids a year you hear about struggling, whether it's struggling attitude-wise, struggling coachable-wise, thinking about transferring, this, that, the other. I mean, you hear it all the time. And most of the time, it doesn't work out. And sometimes you hear about friction, you hear about attitude issues, you hear about it's just not working out. Rarely does it come to fruition like Bear Alexander, a couple months after we first heard it, like Brenton Cox happened. And I'm not saying those two situations are exactly the same. But I think, Wes, that it happening when it happened is some commentary on the situation and the consideration involved as far as this thing goes. So, it's one of those things where I think, Georgia probably could have, if it really wanted to, but it could have made a little bit of a stronger move to maybe keep him around. But I think they've been dealing for this situation for a little while now, and maybe they're not keen on dealing with it much longer.
So when you say the timing was commentary on the situation, you mean like it kind of goes both ways? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, not necessarily both ways. I think it's just, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of a lack of respect there. Like, hey, I got some teammates that are going to get it to go out there, and some young teammates that are going to go out there and put on a Georgia uniform.
Let me make some news myself.
Yeah. Let me steal the day. Let me get this thing rolling.
Yeah.
And hey, listen, this wasn't a situation where you had a and again, I'm not trying to, get after the guy, but this is not a situation where, oh man, somebody saw his name in the transfer portal and this is how it got out. He he got in touch with somebody and had to make a graphic and announce his intentions for G-Day. I think that's some commentary on
this. That this one.
What's up, Jake Roose? I didn't announce Jake Roose at the start of the show, but Jake is.
It doesn't matter.
In the chat with us now. What's up, man?
If you've been watching long enough, you know who I am.
Yeah. You know that voice.
Do you think that, Jake, in your opinion, is the situation more A.D. Mitchell or more Brenton Cox?
It's a good question. Could we say the A.D. Mitchell situation and the Brenton Cox situation had a baby out of wedlock?
Sure.
That's what it turned into.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a little of both. Probably, honestly, what had the Brenton Cox situation happened during the NIL area, probably what the Brenton Cox situation would have been if it would have, happened during the NIL era. So, I mean, it is what it is, and I think the more we talk about it, the more we're going to get accused of trying to make Bear Alexander sound like a bad guy or something. I don't think that at all. I think
it's nothing personal, man. It
wasn't working out at Georgia. Personalities weren't meshing, and I wish the kid the best. I hope every single kid out there gets to live their dream and make a bunch of money and do what they're going to do and go play pro ball. And I think Bear Alexander's got a chance to be really successful. But facts are facts, and the kid's about to play for his sixth school in 6 years.
Yeah, the high school thing is what's I think very interesting, and something that people forget about a lot. But the recruiting situation was, I mean, listen, and like you said, to be fair completely to him, Bear Alexander, his home situation was not a normal one. It was not, super normal is probably the best way to put it. But I think everybody made best do they could, and there were a lot of changes along the way. So it's tough and it happens, but there would have been more surprising people on this roster that this kind of situation could have happened to, I would say.
Tomahawk Dog says scary looking baby.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I didn't want us to get too far in the show without talking about that. I felt like maybe he wanted to make those ripples himself, and he accomplished that. It was the biggest story to me of the game, of the day yesterday, just because there isn't a ton that typically comes out of a G-Day. There were some really cool things, Georgia getting the championship rings, a new UGA, the tribute to Devin Willock and Chandler LaCroix. I mean, it was a pretty meaningful G-Day, but that bit of news, and also the Smile Munden and Branson Robinson news, there was just a lot going on, and normally G-Days can be pretty vanilla.
They definitely can.
I was going to say, outside of like walk-ons just blowing everybody away and having them make wild projections for the fall for their contributions, which is happening, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, and the funny thing is, you want to talk about what surprised me? Nobody's talking about the best play a walk-on made all day, which is Savon Clark shoving Malachi Starks' face mask into the ground and then breaking Darius Smith's tackle and walking into the end zone. That really surprised me, man. Listen, Malachi Starks is down the road, all right? Jefferson kid. I live in Jefferson. I think he's a fantastic talent. But, listen, he's a sophomore. He's a second-year starter. You can't be getting treated like that by a walk-on in a game like this. And you go back to last season, and Malachi struggled in the SEC championship game big time. Bounced back, played a little better in the playoffs. I think he struggled a little bit against Ohio State. TCU didn't have anything for him. But Georgia's going to need him to keep getting better because that play, and I don't think it was, a microcosm of the entire G-Day experience for him. But that was a very negative play. I see this comment also down here about Dylan Raiola, third year of high school. No doubt. I mean, he is playing for his third high school, and that's something. But I mean, he's halfway to where Bear Alexander is at this point. So,
I mean, how often do we talk about this? Like Roose, we bring this up with dudes that come to Georgia that Georgia's looking at. Jermaine Burton. When it doesn't work out for you, that's held against you. But it's kind of the name of the game these days. Mm-hmm. Starting as early as high school, before they even get in the college transfer portal as college athletes, they're in the high school portal.
Well, and I would not say that there's some dissimilarities between Bear Alexander and Jermaine Burton in terms of how everything played out, right? I mean, we're seeing that played over and over again. I mean, do I think that it's fantastic that Dylan Riley is on his third high school? No, I don't think any of this is very normal. I don't think any of it's a very good thing necessarily. I don't know that it's necessarily a mark against somebody's character, but I would say to transfer once in a high school or college makes it easier to transfer twice, right? It's not necessarily a thing that
AD Mitchell.
It's yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, yeah, played in Missouri City and then transfers to Cane Ridge up in Nashville. Yeah, it's not, like I said, it's hard to do it once. It's probably less hard to do it a second time.
Words to live by on the Georgia show. So Jake Rowe, that surprised you the most is that no one's talking about the big play from yesterday.
Well, it just surprised me that it happened, and then B, it surprised me that Cash Jones and Makai Muse are getting all the love over my man Savon Clark.
Well, I mean, Makai Muse did lead all receivers in receptions and yards. Cash Jones was tied for that reception lead. So I don't know. I mean, they were going to be probably my biggest surprise. Another surprise, and Jake, we talked about this in the press box a little bit as we watched it live. Darius Smith in coverage and his ability to get out in space. A good surprise per se.
Brock Bowers got him one time.
Well, he couldn't keep up with Brock Bowers.
Yeah,
Brock Bowers is going to get everybody one.
Yeah,
get in that line.
Yeah, we're talking about the best tight end in the country, and maybe one of the top 5 tight ends, regardless of level of sport. I mean, you could make a case that he would be a top 5 tight end in the NFL right now. Darius Smith, somebody that hasn't played a ton of football at the collegiate level, is keeping up with him stride for stride in coverage. And, and the size, that's not something that you typically see of an outside linebacker, getting into coverage like that. He was, came to college as more of a pass rusher and was able to develop, got some reps at Star last year. At least behind closed doors in practice. We didn't see it in games, and would love to see that some, potentially. But I think what we saw in before our eyes was his coverage ability that came from those reps in practice.
Coverage ability. I like that, Palmer.
Yeah. I know they were 2 different words, but they did sound meshed in there.
Coverage ability. Coverage ability.
Coverage ability. That sounds like something that Progressive will come up with in a few years and trademark, and Palmer was here sitting on it first.
Yep.
No,
Roose, what surprised you the most?
I don't know that anything was necessarily like wild about the whole thing. Maybe the Vandegrift stuff, I guess, that I think that he maybe looked a little worse than people expected he would, given some of the things that we heard over the spring. But at the same time, I don't know that was necessary. I mean, I don't know, man. I hate to read into this stuff. I don't think I saw somebody, NFL Draft Watch, I think it was, on Twitter said, it's all over, or it was a very definitive statement of like Georgia's found its successor for Stetson Bennett. And I'm not saying Carson Beck won't be that guy, but I hesitate to make any decisions based on a spring game. These are scripted scenarios in a lot of cases. They're not. The bullets are flying, but they're not flying as fast as they could, I guess.
They're rubber bullets.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Beanbags.
Exactly. So, I don't know. I mean, it's not surprising to see some typical overreaction to the spring game. I think everybody has that. I was glad to see Raylan Wilson deliver on my pick the other day that I said he would have a nice day, and I thought he did. I wasn't surprised to see that Georgia's defensive freshmen are outstanding, but it was great to see that, is what I'll say. That was probably the big standout for me. Those guys lived up to the billing. They are who we thought they were, or the rankings.
And we let them off the hook.
Yeah, and yeah. And so they came in and delivered. We got to mention over here at Damon Wilson says, surprise me, dude, scary off the edge. David Wilson's a dude, man. David Wilson was a 5-star player. I mean, one of
Georgia's highest rated signee.
Yeah, the crown jewel.
The guy, man. I mean, for the class. So, you love to see that. And like I said, I don't know. Was there anything that jumped off the page to me?
How about Xavier Sorey?
Xavier Sorey had a really nice day.
He was all over the field.
But I'm not with. I have seen this sort of message board chatter of he's going to steal reps from Jamon Dumas-Johnson and Smile Monday. I'm not there yet. I'm not with that yet.
Palmer said, "Hell no."
Yeah, and
he might take him from Ryan Davis, but he's not taking him from either of those two.
And listen, Makai Muse had a fantastic G Day. Do I think he is proud? I mean, that looks like to me Jalen Johnson kind of 2.0, right? That's
I don't even know if that, man. Listen,
Makai
Muse, I know he was dinged up a little bit last year, but with all the injuries Georgia had at receiver last year, if he didn't bust through then, man, brother, I'm telling you, he's got a higher mountain to climb in 2023 because that is the deepest. Ra Thomas didn't play yesterday. That is the deepest, most talented receiving core I've covered since I've been at Georgia.
Makai Muse might make a travel roster, but I don't think he's making a major impact.
Yeah.
No, sure, exactly, right. Yeah, I think he's a sub guy, and could he end up like Jalen Johnson at a place like ECU and play there? Yeah, sure, why not? But Makai Muse, it will not. I would be shocked, and I'll for the sake of my own ease, I'll say if he ends up in a starting lineup at any point, I'll eat a piece of cheese.
Now, hey, I've got a question. I've got a question for y'all. He had 4 receptions for 91 yards yesterday. Does he top that in 2023, the entire season?
The entire season?
Yeah.
I'll say yeah.
Yeah, the schedule's such crap.
Yeah,
he may catch he may do that, but he won't do it outside of the fourth quarter.
Roose, I'll tell you one situation, and maybe I just have like Braves recency bias on the brain. With the soft Georgia schedule, if some of these guys are getting dinged up by like game 5 or 6 and they just need to give someone some load management, maybe Makai Muse gets out there in a ceremonial starting package. You don't even think it happens then? They just line up with 10 people?
I don't. And we'll get to this later.
That was such a sweet little like not even passive aggressive, kind of condescending. They're just gonna go out with 10 people like this.
Makai, just stay over there. We're just dumping on Makai Muse. I hope he comes out and proves you wrong, Jake Roose.
No, listen. I hope so too. I'm not downing the kid. But Georgia,
no.
I didn't know West was such a Central Gwinnett homer.
Actually, big rival of mine.
But no, listen. To me, it's the idea of like Georgia's not going to do that. There's no resting dudes, and we'll get to this, like I said, later in the show. But they're not going to do that for the reason that they've like imparted into recruits, which is competition is king at Georgia, and it's not like we rest guys. Brock Bowers was out there yesterday, putting the work in.
Yeah.
And he got nothing. Brock Bowers could have been in Tahiti yesterday, and nobody would. He would have started game 1. So, I mean, that is what it is. I don't see it happening.
I nominate myself for the 300th day, 600th day in a row as president of the Brock Bowers fan club.
You're gonna be his handler
out there catching passes. The thing that got me the most is I was watching him on the second drive, and he arc released and just put a face mask into Xavier Sorey, I think is who it was, and was just running his feet. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, man. I mean, the dog is in that dude. I mean, he's got that dog in him. He just doesn't know how to play the game any other way.
Yeah. All right. So that's what surprised us. What didn't surprise us? What did we see where we just we called it, we knew it? For me, it's I think it didn't surprise Jake Rowe or myself that Team Palmer and Team Roose had some struggles on their roster.
Dude, we had some too. We lost Smile Munden for the game even started.
You lost Bear Alexander.
And we lost Alexander.
And
they lost
Branson Robinson personally.
Yeah, they lost Branson Robinson right to start with. But I mean, they had a couple touchdowns from Arian Smith. We had a couple touchdowns from Brock Vandegrift.
We had a touchdown from Raylan Wilson.
Yeah, was Raylan Wilson on your squad?
He was.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had the better quarterback.
We got better score. We got 2 scores out of them. We also got a pick out of Tyke Smith.
You also threw that pick.
It's a wash. It's a wash.
We also got a sack.
You threw that pick, Jake Rowe.
We're calling that a push.
We got a sack out of Kristen Miller and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. So
I'll tell you what. Now I mentioned this on the.
Did we have Damon Wilson?
No, I don't know that he got.
I pushed for him.
No, Darius Smith and.
But you said
this went from a team game to now Wes is every man for himself.
Yeah, I wanted him on our athlete spot, and you said no. So I just want that to be stated for the record.
Kristen Miller, I will say, to get back to skip back a little bit. Kristen Miller, a guy I'm excited for, man, because I didn't feel like we heard much about him last year, and it was great to see him perform in G-Day. Here's some things about him this spring. He's a great presence, and if you're looking for like an heir to the Nolan throne in terms of motivator, in terms of personality, I think Kristen Miller can be that guy for Georgia.
Well, I mean, he's a locker room guy. I mean, it's exactly what those, exactly what Nolan was. Somebody that's very likable in that locker room. You constantly are seeing him on the social media because he's just joyful.
Yep.
Man, I went to his signing day ceremony when I was probably 2 weeks into working at DawgsHQ, and I didn't really know much about him, but Jake Roose and I were kind of divvying up, figuring out how we were going to do things. Roose was heading out to see Andrew Paul because he just is a bloodhound for the surprising news of the day. And we decided that I should go out and see Kristen Miller. And he was, man, that was a jolt. That was fun. That was one of the more entertaining, exciting signing days I've been to. And that doesn't mean he was going to piece it together as a player, but I just kind of realized, man, if this guy can play, if he can be a baller, that attitude will carry himself a long way in this Georgia locker room. So,
well, and I'll tell y'all this, I'm going to write on him tomorrow because I think with the Bear Alexander departure, there becomes a huge opportunity for Kristen Miller. Jordan Hall is another guy that was, fit into what Roose talked about earlier. Not too surprising that those young defensive talented, players were outstanding. I mean, Damon Wilson, Jordan Hall, Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen. I mean, the top 4 tacklers plus 2 guys that were tied for 5th place in tackling on the red team were all early enrollees. So going back to Kristen, though, there's a huge opportunity for him now that there's an open spot on that interior defensive line. The numbers, they've lost 2 guys from that interior this spring, with Sean Washington leaving earlier as well. There's the numbers are getting thin there quickly. It's not a concern. And this is another discussion that was being had on the board. It's not a concern because they've recruited well and because they've got some experienced players there with Zion Logue, Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson. It's not a concern because you've got those guys, but they need to address that in this recruiting class. No question. And it was already going to be something that was going to be addressed in this recruiting class.
Well, they went super light last year. I mean, 2 guys on that defensive front last year, and so you knew it was going to be a big class. I think it's already up, and I think also too, I think Jake, you mentioned on the board potential place that they look at the transition.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if it's the right guy, they will. And now the class before that's looking light because they lost 2 of the 4 that they got there in Washington and Bear Alexander.
One of the edge guy.
You're looking at two defensive linemen per class there. The last 2 classes. So they'll fill it how they have to fill it. And you got to kind of trust them to do the roster the right way because that's just kind of how they do it. The good news is that Tramel Wildfire is the only guy that has to leave after this season. God knows they can't keep him around for like a 25th year. He has to retire at some point.
Stetson did it. Stetson's dead for 27.
Dude, Trammell, I believe Trammell came in before I got in the business.
He's collecting a pension.
Yeah, he's been around for a while. He's got some teacher retirement system money hanging around there. But Malik, my man Malik Savage over here in the comments was getting after it with a couple comments. One, he talked about Tyke Smith and making an impact. We got to keep an eye on Tyke, keep in mind on Tyke Smith, torn ACL in his first year, 2021. Coming back from that injury last year, still made an impact, but probably wasn't 100%. Wore a brace all year. Looked really good in that spring game with that interception. And I think him coming on is a big reason why Javon Bullard, and we wrote about that earlier today. Listen, Javon Bullard's comments about playing safety don't sound like Kirby Smart's comments. Kirby says, well, we're moving this and we're trying to create depth. Javon Bullard says he was approached about a position change. Sounds like Javon Bullard is going to be the strong safety, at least for right now. Somebody's going to have to come up and take that strong safety position. I think a lot of that's got to do with how Tyke Smith has looked at Star. And then I mentioned Ra Thomas. Listen, I don't know this for a fact. Sounds like Ra Thomas's situation is just dating back to everything he had go on in his previous deal, and that he got suspended for the spring game is what it sounds to me like. Now, there could be more there, but he was out there. He was dressed out with the team. He was I saw him in pregame warm-up. I just think that he was just not allowed to play in that game because of the stuff he got into there with the preseason with the domestic issue, and it got handled legally. But I think Georgia wanted to kind of, send a message there with that one. If you want to talk about what didn't surprise, I wasn't surprised by Carson Beck playing well. The whole quarterback thing, guys, I feel like some outlets, some of our colleagues, I think some folks got a little wrapped up in excitement and got the cart ahead of the horse. Okay. There was a stretch there in the middle of spring here where Brock Vandegrift played really well. And he had come a long way, and he deserved every bit of praise he got. But I think some folks got too fired up about it, and it was like, oh, Brock's getting ready. Brock's getting ready to make his move. He's getting ready to make the pass. He's stealing reps. We told you that was not the case. Yes, he looked good, but he had to keep looking good. He's got to keep this thing going. Well, Carson Beck put the punctuation on spring that he really needed to put on the spring is in the one scrimmage that the offense got the better of the defense. He was the one who stole the show, and he was the offensive MVP of G-Day because he played so well. He really did. Now, he wasn't perfect, and I wouldn't say he was even close to it. I mean, he had probably 3 throws that he probably should have made that would have made his day look a lot better. But with the first team offense, 13 of 18, 221 and a touchdown, that's something to chew on. I mean, that's good stuff. And I'm not surprised he played well.
How many G-Days have we seen the guy that we either know to be the starting quarterback or we expect to be the starting quarterback go out there and have an underwhelming day, whether it's because the coaches held him back or that was what everyone said happened, or he just knows he's the guy and he didn't really feel like he had too much to prove.
I mean, a lot of people came out of last year's G-Day thinking that Carson Beck had a better day.
Yeah,
no
question.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's the starting quarterback, the number one guy rarely looks great at G-Day. I can't recall too many. I remember Zach Mettenberger looking so much better than Aaron Murray did in the 2010 G-Day game.
Mm-hmm.
Now Met was eventually suspended or, dismissed from the team for some off-field issues before it ever got there. But he looked better than Aaron Murray, even though most people thought Aaron Murray was going to be the starter and Aaron Murray was probably going to be the starter. But yeah, I mean,
I don't know what the situation was there with Mettenberger and Murray and how those reps were divided there. But a lot of the times majority of the times we're seeing the starting quarterback go up against the starting defense. And then that second string quarterback is going up against a defense full of guys that have been on campus for a matter of weeks now. I mean, there's a reason why there were so many early enrollees.
That's why it's great that they switch them up at halftime. And
I did think that was important. And then we saw Brock did not play nearly as well with the first team as he did the second team.
I mean, and I didn't think he played all that well or got into a rhythm with either team. I did think it was kind of funny, though, that Carson Beck was so much better with the first team than he was with the second team. He got a lot more opportunities as well.
He only had one drive with the second team. He completed 2 of 4 passes for 20 or 30 yards.
Yeah, and your boy Tyler Williams, that was, I think, his only catch of the day. Caught a little quick slant there. That was something, if we want to get back to a tiny little surprise real quick, the quick slant seems to have come back to Georgia, at least for the spring game. I've been wondering, hey, man, why didn't Georgia take these and run these man beaters? Well, you got Jackson Meeks there.
Meeks, they just carried him to the end zone.
And then carrying everybody into the end zone, right. I thought he actually had a really good day because he toasted A.J. Harris on a play that could have been a touchdown and didn't get completed to him. But then Tyler Williams comes back with a quick slant. They throw a couple more. I think that's something that would be a really nice addition to the Georgia offense with all of the guys that they can get to kind of win routes.
Did Jackson Meeks draw 2 pass interference penalties?
I don't recall. I only really remember the one, and I don't even think that one was – he was open. I don't necessarily think that was a legit pass interference penalty, though. I mean, that ball was very uncatchable. But
that was early in the game, right?
Yeah, it was. Yes, I believe it was the first drive for the 2 offense.
Right.
For the team.
Did he not draw one on that last drive?
Very well. Dude, I was trying to finish a gamer.
That is fair.
Let's be real.
I was trying. You know how it was, Palmer. We were scrambling for photos, man.
Yeah, that was tough to find. Had the comment up earlier.
Meeks drew one on Julian Humphrey on the last drive. I was genuinely just asking.
Yeah.
I had the comment up earlier about Brock Bowers from Tomahawk Dog. This is what didn't surprise me.
I got to go find this interview because
Brock could not have been, I don't want to say less interested because that conveys a sense that he was just rude and bored and wanted to get out of there, but he could not have been less interested.
I need to tell my man Matthew
after the game.
I got to tell my man Matthew C something. Hey, Matthew C, Mike Bobo called the plays for the first team offense, and that was it. He wasn't even calling the plays for the second team offense. So
who was? Was that like a celebrity?
I believe it was Del McGee or somebody like that. But Bobo
was on that staff. So.
Yeah, Del was on that staff. So they definitely weren't in Bobo's pocket with the black team getting the love there. That would have been with the black team getting the love. That would have been Muschamp and Schumann, or maybe one or the other.
Man, how about that picture of Kirby and Schumann and Muschamp walking out together? I don't know who took it. Have y'all seen it floating around?
Yeah, I believe that was. I believe Brooks Austin took it.
Brooks took it. All right. Well, that was a good snap from Brooks because that is that's like that looks like an album cover.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one thing that doesn't surprise us is the quality of the apparel at Breaking T. And if you guys haven't already checked out the link in the episode description in any given episode, I don't know what you're waiting on at this point because we've told you time and time again that it's the place to be. It's the place to go for your back-to-back national championship apparel. The only thing they're not selling right now is the replica national championship rings, which are pretty sweet. I think you'll have to go through Jostens or Jostens to get those. Maybe it's Josens, maybe the T silent. I've never really heard anyone say it, but the T is not silent at Breaking T. You can pick up your Brock Bowers t-shirt. Stetson Bennett, he was there at G-Day yesterday, had a cult following him around. He's not been canceled between the hedges at Georgia. So head on over to Breaking T. Get yourself a Georgia National Championship t-shirt. Get ahead of the curve as the Dogs hunt down the three-peat.
My good buddy Jeff Sintel told me that Stetson Bennett signed no fewer than 100, 200 autographs yesterday. And that's for a guy that's got a pretty good autograph minimum in terms of what he charges for him to like do memorabilia sales and stuff.
Man, I thought he was a jerk. I thought everyone said he was a huge jerk.
Well, he's also got ears, I bet. So,
Jake Roose, what do we learn about the recruiting impact at G-Day? You had a pretty good report today about a huge target for the Dogs, KJ Bolden, who can't wait to get back to Georgia. Peyton Woodyard as well. Some people getting a little fidgety about the Dogs commit. What kind of impact did a perfect April day in Athens have on some of these top prospects?
It was a really strong day for Georgia, but I don't think it was anything that you would expect to, blow your socks off in terms of what guys said. Listen, KJ Bolden's a super smart kid. He's been going through this process now for going on 4 years. He knows what to say. He knows how to say it. He's interacted with the media a lot, and he said all the right things. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't read into what he said. I think that what he said was very genuine. He loves Georgia, and I believe that to be true. But it's the home feeling is the consistent thing that I heard. Each and every kid almost that I spoke to today, and I spoke to a couple that I haven't written the stories on just yet, but everybody talked about, Georgia made me feel at home. There was a really personal aspect to it. This will be in one of the stories I write later this week, but Solomon Thomas out of Rains High School down at Jacksonville, the home of Solomon Kinley, told me that he said, what really impressed me was, he said, I showed up, they were calling me by my first name. They were calling my mom by her first name. They called my cousins by their first name. And we weren't wearing lanyards. They couldn't just, stare down and look at our name. They knew us before we got there. And that really stood out to him. And, I think that Georgia obviously has done an incredible job of focusing on recruiting, but, there's been no letdown in that whatsoever, even with all the success that they've had. And we're talking about 2025 guys, not the guys that are immediate needs. But yeah, the KJ Bolden stuff, like I said, was really interesting. You heard Peyton Woodyard was recruiting him a little bit. He said they kind of developed a personal relationship as well. I think that I use the analogy. My dad's always told me about poker. You need a chip and a chair. You just got to stay in it, man. And I think with KJ Bolden, that's the case. You need to stay in this thing as long as you can. Ohio State's in it. Alabama's in it. Ohio State or Clemson, I'm sorry, is in it. Bolden's one of those guys that everybody's going to be in until the very end of things. And I don't think any determinations have been made by him, but I think Georgia's one of those schools that's definitely in the mix for him. And as great of a player as he is, and as much as Georgia could use a guy of his caliber, you've got two fantastic safety commits in Peyton Woodyard and Jalen Hayward right now as well. So he feels like a bit of a luxury, but a guy of this caliber is always going to be recruited until the bitter end. And
growing up in Gwinnett, I remember a day where the narrative was Georgia never gets guys from Grayson, and Georgia can't ever get guys from Buford. And
the Buford thing still feels kind of true.
It does feel kind of true.
Yeah, I mean, you got Justice. You missed out on Justice Haynes once he there. Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, you've got those notions, and I mean, gosh, the last guy to Grayson, I think, was D'Angelo Gibbs, if I'm remembering.
Was it Gibbs? Was it? Yeah.
Well, D'Angelo Gibbs, I believe, was Peachtree Ridge by that point, wasn't he?
No, he transferred to.
That's right. That was the other way. He started at Peachtree, right?
Didn't Griffin Scroggs go to one of these schools?
Yeah, Griffin Scroggs went to Grayson.
That's
right. No, he was at Buford, wasn't he?
No, he was Grayson.
Oh, okay.
He went from Buford to Grayson, I believe.
What incredible! What a flip.
Justin Young,
Dallas
Justin Young from Grayson as well.
Dallas Lee is one in the Wayback Machine that went to Buford.
But I think we also need to point out too, and it's not a knock against these schools. I can't remember really a guy from those schools that Georgia missed out on that was just a massive, hurtful deal. I mean, from Buford, last guy I remember him getting was Isaac Nauta. And I still have to say he's from Buford, but even though he went to IMG and then maybe came back, I can't remember what happened there. But I mean, he's a Buford kid, just like I don't really consider Justice Haynes a
Georgia didn't miss out on the Kim Deechees in that vein, Ro.
Yeah,
I mean, they were ballers.
Rob had a good career, but they weren't going to get him.
Well, and Matthew C over here says Gwinnett County as a whole, it seems like right down 316, Georgia can't get those kids. What I tell people about this very often is that a lot of these kids are not Georgia kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're transplant kids. They're people. These are people moving in from all parts of the country. The guy who comes to mind first of all is Barrett Carter, who's the linebacker at Clemson.
Right.
He was from the Chicago area, and his family just moved into Atlanta for a better opportunity for their careers. And so it's not like he grew up loving the Dogs. And I think
good public schools. I mean, it's all those classic pulls to Gwinnett County. You have a good job in Atlanta, you can commute, and it's the same thing. It doesn't feel like an Atlanta thing, but it totally is. And a lot of them just aren't Georgia kids. It's so true.
And listen, listen, I think that it's different if you are out in, let's say, Darris Smith, for example, right? You go to Appling County High School. That's the only high school in the county. And ain't nobody from Baxley that ain't from Baxley, right? For the most part. And you grew up a Georgia fan, and probably your dad grew up a Georgia fan, and your granddad was a Georgia fan too.
Yeah, you ain't got dudes roaming around the Midwest with a Baxley, Georgia brochure like Joe Dirt saying, "I'm going to get to Baxley, baby."
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I got love for Baxley, man, but it ain't happening like that. That's deep ingrained stuff, right? A Georgia offer means something different in a place like that than it does in Gwinnett County.
Tomahawk Dog. I'd love to know what that is. I don't think you got handlers and or black magic or voodoo.
I'll tell you this right now. You just mentioned the word handlers. Caleb Downs was not controlled by handlers. Okay.
Yeah.
Caleb Downs' father is a college football coach.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Downs just wanted to do his own thing. I mean, he grew up in the state. I mean, he was there. I get it, man. And there were other factors, of course.
And it's not just Gwinnett County. It's Cobb County. It's Forsyth County. It's the metro Atlanta area. And I think the primary reason is the fact that
Travis Hunter.
Those kids aren't, they're from Florida. They're from all of Maryland. They have ties there. Lebus Oberton is another guy.
Sure. And also too, it's like the basketball thing to some degree, right? You've got all these great schools that are in the immediate area, and they all have super access to Atlanta, and you can spend your recruiting budget and you can see 25 schools in a day in Atlanta, or you can go to South Georgia and spend $1,000 to get a coach down there and send him to see one kid in a day. They're getting contact from all these schools all the time, man. It's easy for coaches to stay in contact with them, and that's a harder draw for everybody. I don't think it's necessarily a Gwinnett County thing. Look at Atlanta, look at Cobb, look at it's the metro area in general is recruited so heavily, and you miss out on a lot of it.
It's kind of like the fake Falcons narrative, just at the other end of the spectrum. Yeah. This time it's high school, not the NFL. Yeah. Last thing before we wrap up here, Matthew C did ask about Landon Thomas. I'm kind of surprised to hear about that being a questionable in the eyes of Matthew C. Is Landon Thomas a goner, Roose?
The FSU buzz is strong right now, for sure. And I get that. He had a chance to make it down there, but also, too, he was taking the ACT, and so he couldn't make it to G-Day. Georgia is where it is. I mean,
97.1% on the RPM recruiting prediction machine.
Yeah, I haven't seen any new ones go in for FSU just yet. So, and we got Warchan is the leader in the market when it comes to Florida State stuff. So,
I didn't want that to be in the comment section.
Landon Thomas was going to be contested until the end, regardless. And listen, if he does flip, then don't worry, Georgia will keep on him too.
Dogs Talk Sunday. This can be a sponsored segment by you if you have a financial tip or run a financial organization that's above board and certified by the FBI. What would it be? The
FCC, I think.
FCC.
I hear there's a good place over in Long Island called Investa Center. That would they sell pennies. Got what's it called? Sorry, I'm getting a little wrapped up in Wolf of Wall Street here. I can't remember the Aerotine Dynamics. Yeah, Yeah, there we go. Arrow time.
Yeah.
It's worldwide, I think is what.
Dog Stocks brought to you by Arrow Time. Stock up on Georgia just getting multiples of everything, multiple championships. You got multiple UGAs. At one point, you had 2 UGAs in the same doghouse yesterday. That brought a tear to my eye, man. That was just
one was nibbling on the other's ear. It was gorgeous.
It was like the lineage in UGA 10. Q was just showing Boom around the place. He's like, hey, this is 3 square feet, but over here is where you keep your ice bag right here is where you take a nap. So it was pretty cool. And then all of the rings these guys get. We were looking forward to this ring reveal of the national championship. I didn't realize they got a ring for the Peach Bowl, the SEC championship. It looked like they had a separate national championship ring and one with the back-to-back trophies on it. So Georgia, just stock up on Georgia celebrating and getting bigger and badder in all the best ways possible. Yesterday had a lot packed into it at G-Day, and the Dogs are they're just on a whole new level right now. And we already knew this on the field, but you're seeing it in some of these other things too.
They get one. The second championship ring is from the college football playoff.
Okay.
But as we talk about multiples, let's not forget that they've got multiples of several names on this team. It is really, really hard to write about this team when you've got so many Wilsons, Harrises,
last year
Robinsons, Smiths.
Still got some Smiths. I mean,
still got a lot
of Robinsons right now. Big time Robinsons.
The Robinsons use the hell out of me too.
Two Robinsons in the same running back room.
Yeah.
I mean, how many Harrises are there going to be in the DB room?
Justin Robinson transferred. That helped out.
The amount of CJ. You got a ton of CJs too.
Yeah.
True.
CJs, EJs, RJs, PJs. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah. Careful with it. The next letter you throw in there. All right. Dog stock. We'll go around the horn. Palmer, was that your dog stock down on Georgia's multiple names?
No, I mean, no, that's not mine. I will go with, and we kind of discussed this a little bit earlier. I'll shift mine a little bit. I'll go stock up on one of those multiple names, and that's Smith, Arian Smith, having himself a big day yesterday. 2 touches, 2 touchdowns. That's pretty good hit rate if my math is correct there. So
that's 100%.
Yeah. I think what is big for him, and Wes, I listened in to the conversation that you had with him. I talked to him a little bit before Carson Beck showed up, and it's the health. I mean, Kirby said it was asked about, how big it was for Arian to have a full spring, without being, banged up at all. And he said, I hold my breath every time. I'm worried about injury. He stretches the field in ways that other guys can't. So we have to be smart about the way that they handle him, knowing that he's injury prone. So, I think stock up on Arian Smith as he continues to gain confidence, as he, knock on wood for his sake, stays healthy. Jake Rowe, don't write about him. Don't talk about him. You're not allowed to mention his name with your track record. I
think that's a running back deal, but yeah.
Stock up on Arian Smith and stock up on that receiver room as a whole. Jake mentioned it earlier. Just, an incredibly deep.
Well, just pick them all off, Palmer. Jesus Christ.
A versatile group.
Stock up on the state of Georgia.
Just pick them all off. Just check all the stocks off. First of all, stock up on DawgsHQ. We've got 4 months for $10, and that's going to be extended a couple days. We're going to go through Tuesday. I talked to the powers that be today. I bent the knee and I said to them, powers that be, we've got some good premium stuff coming the next couple of days. We've got depth chart projections post-spring. We got some insider notes coming. We got some X's and O's coming. And that's just for me, and I'm probably the worst writer on the site. So these other 3 guys have gotten some other good stuff that is going to be coming as well. So come on over, Check us out. Perfect time to do it. $10 gets you 4 months. If you don't like it after that, leave and never come back. You never have to come back again. But otherwise, you're going to want to join us because it's awesome. Also, stock up on the walk-ons. We talked about it. Nobody's even talking about the best play made from a walk-on. Savon Clark, stud, Heisman. He's going to do it. Stock up on Beck, Carson Beck. I am hearing that he's going to turn down the NFL supplemental draft, and he is going to be Georgia's a quarterback at Georgia this year, so that's a good thing. And Palmer, that thieving son of a gun, stole my receiver thing. Like I said, the deepest, best receiving core I've covered since I've been covering Georgia. Lab McConkey, I think Dominic Lovett in flashes yesterday was absolutely special, doing some of the things that he did. I think Ra Thomas is going to be an impact guy. Marcus Rosenby, Jack Saint, Arian Smith, Dylan Bell. That is a very, very impressive group. And then you got Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp, Austin Lucky. Georgia's really, really fortunate to be in that spot, and they're really unfortunate to be in that spot with breaking in a new quarterback. So super high on that receiving room. And hopefully I've gotten everything out of the way. So Jack Roose has
you're on a roll, man.
Hey, I'm not going to take credit for the ability to pull the stuff up here. Wes runs the
huge stock up on that ring though. That ring is sick.
That ring is cool.
That ring is sick.
It scares me almost. It's got like some dark energy around it.
Oh Lord.
Dark energy.
All right, I'm going to say, listen, I talked about this. I wrote a piece before G-Day on Saturday, and I said that there were 3 things Georgia needed to do to impress recruits while they were on campus. And one of them was to continue to use the guys that were penciled in a big way, or the guys that were penciled in to be starters in a big way. And I think they did that on Saturday. And recruits brought that back. So I'm going to say stock up on Georgia and the culture of competition that they have continued to create. When you talk to kids out here, they're saying, listen, the freshmen are being featured earlier. The guys are competing every single time I see the practice. I'm seeing it in G-Day. It's coming across every single time they get a chance to watch it. And I think that that's really impressive. The number one thing I would say that I've heard from recruits lately that separates Georgia from other schools is how they practice. And Georgia continues to reinforce that almost each and every time they hit the field. That's really, really something that's catching a lot of eyes. They've been doing it for a couple years now, and they haven't let the foot off the gas there. Georgia's culture of practice is a huge stock up for me, and I think will continue to pay dividends for them. You saw it in a big way with those freshman defenders yesterday. I think that you're going to continue to get guys like that because of the culture you've created.
They practice their practice.
The practice within the practice. Practiceception. Thank y'all for joining us this week on our G-Day recap. A lot to break down and a really exciting G-Day in the rear view and a lot up ahead for this Georgia football team. Please take advantage of the spring game special. $10 for 4 months. You don't want to miss out on that. This is free stuff, but we go much, much deeper throughout the week on DawgsHQ.com. And on the message board as well. And we really appreciate the back and forth there. This is nothing compared to the virtual sparring, the jokes, the fun that we have over at the DawgsHQ message board. So a lot to unearth and unpackage if you are a DawgsHQ premium member. $10 for 4 months of that. That's a steal, man. So hit like, subscribe, do all the things that I'm telling you to do, but know that we're grateful for it. We've cleared the spring football game, and it is all gas, no breaks between now and fall camp. We can't wait to do it. Can't wait to make you a part of it as well right here on The Georgia Show every Sunday at 8:30 p.m. and every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. And Bark After Dark, guys, has a guest for the ages at 9 p.m.
Seth Emerson, baby. We're excited. We're actually going to talk a little football, but we're also going to talk about Seth and where he comes from and why he's in Athens and why he loves it so damn much.
We get trained journalists once in a while.
Yeah, we do. We do. And
people who know what they're doing. Not just Jake and I who just stumble blindly most of the time.
Yeah, and Seth's one hell of a rider, and I'm excited to hear him hear his story because he's a really good friend, and we're stoked. Good Bark After Dark coming tomorrow night. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
Y'all have a great week. We'll catch you soon.